in Jewish society is usually persona non grata with those who have been the beneficiaries of the system.
On Thursday, former Baltimore City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby is set to be sentenced, facing up to 40 years in prison after being wrongfully convicted of perjury and mortgage fraud. The case has ignited outrage across the nation, particularly among civil rights advocates. Just this morning, I learned that many prominent figures are going to be holding a press conference, a pre-sentencing press conference, talking about this broader attack on Black female prosecutors who are standing up against systematic racism. And I thought who else better to have on this topic to talk about than Reverend Al Sharpton. Rev, thank you for talking about this. I know you can go on and on and on about the attacks that we are seeing, not just from Maryland, but Fonnie Willis, I mean, even DA Alvin Bragg. But let's talk about this case in particular, what the details are and why it's garnered so much attention.
I think that many of us, first of all, knew of Marilyn Mobley's work, Mobley's work in Baltimore. She indicted the police that killed Fred Gray. And she did other police prosecutions, and she was fingered and targeted by Donald Trump, who attacked her by name. And I believe these investigations around her started, it is my belief, because of the Trump administration, and they put a target on her back. It fits a pattern, as you said, of what they've done to Fannie Willis, doing now in New York to Alvin Bragg and others around the country. It's almost like they resent to the point of their white supremacy, that how dare a Black drag me in the courts? We created this to punish you all. You can't do this to us. And I think that when you look at her, Marilyn's tenure of being fair, she took criminals that were in the Black community she prosecuted. But she did not spare the police. She did not spare those in government. And they came with what looks to me, by all lawyers that I trust that have reviewed it, very weak case. And she's facing 40 years, mother of two. There's no way we could remain silent. We've jointly called on the president to give her a pardon. And even if they don't give her a lot of time at the hearing tomorrow, we still must call for a pardon for Marilyn.
Absolutely. Now, I know her defense team is asking for probation, and I want people to know this. When you talk about some of those numbers and what she was convicted of, her conviction was for using her own retirement funds. Honestly, I've had to read this case over and over because I can't wrap my mind around it. During the COVID-19 pandemic under the CARES Act, and she did something that we've seen quoted and over again, over 730 people have done, but she's being made an example. She's the only one that has been charged because of this, and also received some bad advice in the process from some on her team. But her case is unique, and you cannot ignore her position and also race. You talked about the president pardoning her. There have been many dozens of requests from civil rights leaders, from NAN, also from Congressional Black Caucus. How likely do you think that we will see that?
I think that if we are insistent upon it, and I think if we keep the pressure on, the president and vice president knows every vote counts. And to have a high profile prosecutor like this penalized for what, as you said, over 700 people did, and they're not being prosecuted. This is the kind of imbalance and kind of targeting of Black officials that they must stand up against to show the Black community why they are worthy of our enthusiastic support. I think a lot is going to happen with this is dependent on what the judge does tomorrow in court, on Thursday in court. Because if the judge comes down severe, it's going to only make this even more pressure on the president. So a lot of us are praying, but even if the judge gives her just parole or probation or whatever the lawyers say, I will still be calling on the president to pardon us. This was totally selective, and selective prosecution is not justice at all.
I hear you on that. You know, I know that when I attended the conference, and AND conference, this past conference this year, Alvin Bragg was also in attendance. And I know you talked to many prosecutors like Bragg and Gardner and Mosby and others about the attacks that they are facing. And I don't think people really know the small number of Black prosecutors. It's under 2%. I think it's closer to 1%. So when you look at that, even the attack that we saw on DA Fani Willis, when you look at that, it shows you the injustice, but also the fear and the power of having African Americans in these positions, and why your vote is so crucial.
Absolutely. They first of all, they would not be after people like Bragg, like Fani Willis, like Mosby, if they were not representing power. People don't waste their bullets on things that are not worth shooting at. They just don't. And I think that is why we must vote and keep electing these prosecutors, because they don't want us in those halls of power. They don't want us where, you got to remember, Donald Trump, who I believe is a racist, is now looking at, he is facing a Black DA in Manhattan, whose case is winding down, a Black female DA in Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County, a Black woman judge in Washington, D.C. This is his worst nightmare. That his hands, his life is in the hands of some Blacks in the judicial process who took advantage of the doors that were opened by activists and got themselves in a position where they qualified and got the public to put them there. So I think that they just can't. I think it is probably as much a thing to Donald Trump that is an Alvin Bragg and a Fani Willis that holds his life in their hand as it is the very charges against him. He just can't believe that a Black person could take down the president, former president of the United States. And I can't believe we're going to sit there and allow them to disrupt that in any way. Because what did we fight for? We didn't fight to make noise. We fought to open doors for qualified people in our community to walk through those doors and prove they're as qualified as anybody else.
Absolutely. I want to switch topics before we leave. The President Biden is welcoming Kenyan President William Ruto to the White House. It's a historic 3-day state visit, making this the first such honor for African nations since 2008. And this comes as Kenya is preparing to send 1,000 police officers to Haiti as part of a UN-led mission to combat gang violence. What is your expectation? Are you going to be at the state dinner at all?
I've been invited to state dinner. I will be there on Thursday evening. I think it's very important. This country, the United States, must engage Africa. I've raised very publicly that I don't understand how we are only dealing with Ukraine and dealing with what's going on with Israel and Gaza, and ignoring Sudan and ignoring Haiti. And I think for President Ruto to be given this 3-day visit and given a state dinner, as he is doing what the United States is not doing, hands-on Haiti, I think is a very important thing. And I'm going to say that to him and President Biden tomorrow night. I think it is very timely and very important. You got to ask yourself, with this country having the population of Black Americans as it has, and in this election, how all of them depend on the Black vote, as the president himself said in Morehouse, how can you ignore a Black nation in our hemisphere and host an African nation that did not ignore it, that's sending 1,000 police down there. When the guns that are in Haiti were trafficked from the United States, the people that are selling the guns and doing the trafficking are United States gun dealers that we ought to be clamping down.
Name all over it, all over it. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I started to say thank you so much, President Sharpton. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to put a pin in that one. I promise you I will. But is there anything else you think that we need to do?
Let's just keep going forward, and let's pray and stand up for Marilyn Mosby.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Can't wait to get you back.
Thank you.